Despite spending years in school and investing large amounts of money, most people never achieve financial freedom. Why does this happen? To understand, we need to go back in time and examine the origins of our traditional educational system. In ancient and medieval times, if you wanted to get educated, you would go to monasteries, temples, or churches to learn mostly religious subjects, a way to instill specific beliefs and values. This emphasis on religious teaching was foundational and will become relevant later in our discussion. For learning practical skills in ancient times, things were more straightforward. If you wanted to become a blacksmith, you learned directly from a master through apprenticeship. This mentor apprentice system was effective and focused on real world skills. Social mobility was limited, with most people following in their parents' footsteps. Society was bound by a strict, often hereditary hierarchy. Positions of royalty, nobility, and skilled trades were passed down through generations, reinforcing a rigid, unchallenged aristocracy. But all of this began to change with the rise of imperialism and increasing unrest among the working classes. As education became more widely accessible, more people outside the aristocracy began to acquire knowledge and skills. This shift challenged traditional power structures. Educated individuals started questioning the status quo as seen in the moments like the French Revolution. As the flaws in hereditary roles became clear, societies began valuing meritocracy, the idea that positions should be awarded based on ability rather than birthright. Initially, this shift focused on civil service roles but eventually extended to university admissions and other fields. This move toward merit over inheritance was revolutionary, but it also laid the groundwork for a system that ironically often maintains a different kind of inequality. Understanding this evolution of education helps explain the challenges of today's system, one that still struggles to balance opportunity with entrenched advantages. While all of these shifts were occurring, one recurring theme during the medieval period was war. As empires expanded and nations competed for dominance, one challenge that became apparent was the difficulty in recruiting and training soldiers. The Prussians, in particular, faced the challenge of quickly preparing their people for warfare, which led them to create a system that would reshape education as we know it today. In the early 19th century, the Prussians developed a state controlled educational framework aimed at solving this problem. This system, which provided universal access to education, was designed not only to educate but also create loyal, disciplined, and obedient citizens, individuals who could serve the Prussian state, its military, and its growing ambitions. The educational system became a tool for indoctrination, promoting authoritarian and nationalist ideologies. The impact of this ideology was felt deeply during the World Wars, where citizens were trained to prioritize loyalty and duty to the state. Now, as this was unfolding, the Industrial Revolution was transforming parts of Europe. The demand for factory workers shifted the focus of education once again, from shaping disciplined soldiers and citizens to producing compliant factory workers. A famous quote from industrialist John D. Rockefeller sums up this idea: "I don't want a nation of thinkers, I want a nation of workers." Rockefeller, who also funded many schools and universities, was a strong proponent of this vision. Education was now increasingly geared toward serving the needs of the industrial economy, not fostering critical thinking but ensuring that workers were efficient, reliable, and specialized. Meritocracy also gained ground during this time. The US military, facing challenges in training people for various roles, discovered that individuals with lower IQ scores were more difficult to train. This realization led to the development of standardized testing, which became a tool for sorting people based on their cognitive abilities. Under the guise of meritocracy, standardized tests became a way to classify individuals and allocate roles, particularly in education and the military. Thus, the bedrock of our current educational system was established, one that aimed to serve both nationalistic and industrial interest, prioritizing conformity, obedience, and cognitive partitioning. Over time, these systems evolved into the educational frameworks we know today, which, despite being framed as meritocratic, often perpetuate inequality and limit real opportunity for many. The way I see standardized testing is like this: educators set the frequency, the fitness through the type of questions they ask, the syllabus they create, and the expectations they set. Students then need to meet a certain threshold to qualify for admission or secure a job, creating a cognitive partitioning system. The problem is not all of us are wired the same way. Each of us have different temperament and cognitive imprint. This is where the concept of the farmer versus hunter mind comes in. Evolutionarily speaking, farmers were people who thrived on rigid structure, routine, and stability. No, their work was predictable and methodical. Hunters, on the other hand, had to be adaptable, able to handle varied stimuli and think on their feet. These differences in temperament have roots in our genetics, shaping how we approach problems and interact with the world. Now, with our current cognitive partitioning system, the standardized test and rigid educational models, now we are effectively setting the frequency for farmer minds. The system promotes qualities like obedience, conformity, and the ability to fit neatly into a larger machine. Here's the problem: it ends up leaving out a large portion of population, particularly those with more hunter-like qualities. People who thrive in unpredictable environments, think creatively, and adapt to rapidly changing circumstances. By focusing on one standardized mold, we are ignoring the diverse temperaments and cognitive styles that could contribute much more creatively and innovatively to society. This creates a system that not only neglects a large group of people but also limits the potential of those who don't fit the farmer mold. One of the most concerning issues with the cognitive partitioning system, especially in countries with high inequality, is the rise of a new kind of aristocracy. This is an aristocracy of talent formed under the guise of meritocracy. Take India's NEET exam, for example. NEET is a medical entrance exam that determines admission to top medical colleges. If you score highly, you secure a seat in a prestigious institution under the merit category. If you score lower, you are placed into management or private seats, often requiring significant financial resources. The cycle starts early. Children from wealthy families can afford coaching centers where they began preparing for this exam from a young age. The costs can run into lakhs of rupees, far beyond the reach of most families. Similarly, for other exams like JEE or UPSC, coaching centers become an essential part of preparation. Every year, millions of students take these exams, all vying for the top seat. A closer look at the top scorers reveal a common pattern. Nearly all of them have attended coaching centers from an early age, giving them a significant advantage. This creates a massive K2 disparity, a gulf between those who can afford early coaching and those who cannot. This isn't just an isolated case, it's a systemic issue. This model creates a new elite, one that is legitimized by the illusion of merit. It justifies deep inequalities, cloaking them in the language of fairness and opportunity. What was initially intended to provide equal access and fairness, meritocracy, has now become a tool that perpetuates inequality. In an unfair society, a meritocratic system can strengthen class privilege. Instead of leveling the playing field, it keeps the wealthy on top and leaves those without resources behind, masking inequality as fairness. For students from lower income backgrounds, failing to secure a merit based seat often leads to one option: private colleges. The catch is that they take on huge amounts of debt, spending years, even decades, paying off loans for degrees that may not guarantee a job or financial stability, all in pursuit of social status. This brings us to the concept of social mobility, or the ability to move up the socioeconomic ladder. In theory, education should be the great equalizer, allowing anyone, regardless of their background, to improve their position in society. However, the reality is far from this ideal. The Great Gap Curve reveals a harsh reality. The greater the income inequality in a society, the lower the social mobility. In countries with high inequality, it's much harder to move up the social ladder, no matter how hard you work or how much you study. Additionally, in such societies, we face what's known as sticky ceilings and sticky floors. Sticky ceilings refer to barriers that prevent people from rising to higher levels of success or power, regardless of their talent or efforts. On the flip side, sticky floors keep those from lower income backgrounds stuck at the bottom, unable to move up even with hard work or ambition. This systemic inequality creates a society where your zip code or family wealth has more influence over your future than your own efforts, education, or merit. Even with all its flaws, meritocracy remains one of the most effective systems for driving social and economic progress. This is why countries like Singapore have managed to thrive. Research shows that when merit is absent, it often gets replaced by nepotism, dynasties, and hereditary power structures. Now, this dynamic still persists today in fields where merit based criteria are less rigid. In politics, cinema, and business, we see the rise of Nepo babies, individuals who benefit more from family connections than their own achievements. For instance, in politics, there are the Gandhi family in India, the Trudeau family in Canada, and the Bushes and Clintons in the United States. Without a true meritocracy, society risks becoming a Pluto aristocracy where power and privilege remain concentrated in the hands of a few, regardless of their actual capabilities. Earlier, I mentioned how education was linked to religion in ancient and medieval times, with temples, monasteries, and churches being the centers of learning. From a psychological perspective, that sense of holiness still lingers today. Education is often seen as sacred, something we are meant to admire and strive for. This belief makes it hard to critically examine the flaws in these institutions. We need to break down the social reverence around the education to see it for what it truly is: a system that often exploits people for profit. Elite universities, for example, are not immune to this. Backdoor and side door admissions are common for the wealthy and well connected, deepening the inequality that the system creates. Adding to the problem is the widening gap between the skills taught in universities and those demanded by the job market. The curriculum many of our educational institutions follow is outdated, preparing students for careers that no longer exist or soon will not exist due to technological advancement. With the rise of AI, we are heading for a disruption like nothing we have seen before. Many of the jobs students are being trained for today will be replaced by AI, just like automation replaced factory jobs during the Industrial Revolution. AI is set to disrupt almost every industry. Jobs in areas like customer service, accounting, and even parts of medicine and law, once considered stable careers, are now being redefined or fully automated. So the question is, if the skills universities teach are becoming outdated, why do we keep relying on systems that no longer meet the needs of today's world? As AI continues to evolve, many of the jobs that exist today simply won't be around tomorrow. And we need to rethink what it means to be educated in an increasingly automated world. Now, I used to hate school. It didn't teach me survival skills, didn't help me think critically, it didn't encourage creativity. Over time, I realized something important. It's not the school's job to teach those things. So, why do we go to school? The answer is simple. We go to learn domain specific knowledge to become part of the system. Schools are designed to train us to be cogs in the machine, not free thinkers or entrepreneurs. You're not going to get rich by just going to school. Most billionaires own businesses and they didn't get where they are by simply being part of someone else's system. A lot of kids stress over exams, and I used to be one of them, but now I know better. Most of what school teaches is indoctrination. It's about rote memorization and memorizing facts with little to no practical utility, and the worst part, much of it has zero relevance to the job market. Even beyond the big exams, most assessments are written tests graded by humans who are inherently biased. It's not fair and it's certainly not an equal playing field. Here's the reality: if you're coming from a lower socio-economic background, you're at a serious disadvantage. You will have to work much harder just to get the same opportunities as someone from a wealthier background. This is the reality of our meritocratic system, a system that often doesn't truly reward merit. The good news is that anything is possible as we move through 2024. The world is rapidly evolving and opportunities are more accessible than ever due to advancements in technology, innovation, and entrepreneurship. Do not allow exam scores to define your value. You don't need to be a part of the system to succeed. Focus on what really matters, building skills that are actually useful, embracing creativity, and thinking creatively. Don't let your self worth depend on exam performance. The future is yours to create. Step into it with purpose, knowing that your potential is far greater than any test score or outdated system. If you found this video helpful, share it with someone who could benefit from this message, and I will see you in the next one.